Welcome to AccountKit. In today's session we will be looking at the setup of client maps within the platform. As a practice administrator, we jump down to our name down the bottom left hand side of screen and select Practice Settings. Before we move over to Tool Settings and set up our client map defaults, just important to note that underneath Practice Settings we have our visual settings here. And in your visual settings you can set practice colors by clicking the plus icon down the bottom. This allows you to enter in hex codes and save those colors as needed. It's important to note where this is, as this will have a play-on effect to client maps underneath Tool Settings. Once we open up client maps, this is our ability to set up the system defaults or practice defaults for the way we want our client maps to first create. Under General Settings, we have the ability to select our default status of those client maps. We recommend having this set to Proposed. The reason being is current diagrams, if you are two-way syncing with XPM, have the ability to update information to and from the platforms. In which case you want to have them created as proposed by default and then move to current once you're comfortable with the changes you've designed into your structure diagram for a client. Historical and Sandbox are used just as test databases, allowing you to create things such as sandbox structures for clients, and then historical is for those records that are no longer current or in a proposed phase. Next we have our practice colors. As previously mentioned, you can also add your practice colors from this screen as well, but it's always important to have your visual settings set too. We then have the option to select our default theme, and there's classic or outline to choose from, giving you a slightly different stylized effect on the theming basis around your design. Select the theme edit name here and note that you can create a new one at any point in time, and that theme will default into this area here. You may have multiple set up based on preferences, so feel free to give it a test or a play. We're going to stick with the system default of Classic. We then come down to our entity visuals. This allows us to select the color and design of our different structures or entities as they are dropped onto the client map. For example, down here I have self-employed, which hasn't been yet set with a color. What I can do is simply change the font color, and I'm going to update this to white. I'm then going to update the body color, which will then go into selecting similar to our individual groups, which will be our green. And then I have the ability to set a border color should I choose to. Finally, updating a shape will change the icon design when that particular entity is dropped onto a map. Please play around with these. Generally we recommend, however, that all of your similar type entities have similar color schemes within the system. So companies, we use red, individuals we use green, and trusts we use variants of blue. You may choose, however, to use whatever color scheme you like. This will then set how all of our structure diagrams will create by default, but once that diagram has been generated underneath Consulting and Client Maps, you can change any individual item within this list here to your heart's content for any given client. We also have the option to move across to other settings. And this is our ability to select or pick and choose how we want information to display in our client maps. For example, we may want to change the height, width and corner radius of our different shapes and how thick we would like the border to be. Our visibility around what information displays, so we could toggle on to show the TFN or remove it should we not be comfortable sharing the information. And then underneath all of that, we have our various selections around our shapes and icons. Note that you will not have header, body or footer settings if you select shapes that do not have a header, body and footer allocation, such as the default shape. From here we can select what font type we would like to use, the height or width that we would like to have for the text and information, and whether we want the text to wrap by default. We can also select the way we want text to display. So for a header we may want to center, but for information showing within the body of the client map we may want to left align. Please have a play around with these settings until you set a visual design that you prefer. Finally, we jump down to line settings down the bottom, and you can pick and choose the way you would like your lines and icons to display, what color they tend to be, and the start and end color for things like our changes of arrows and whatnot. As always, once you have made those changes, we can come across to our client maps or structure diagrams, create one as a test, so we hit our plus icon up the top, select the group that we would like to generate this for, give it a name, hit save, and by hitting the lightning bolt up the top, we can now see what our default diagram is going to look like by clicking Build Diagram. As mentioned, you can change the colors or the designs of any element by clicking on the element and adjusting accordingly based on whichever section of the box you're looking to change, so this being the header, the body and the footer, or to change it generally across the board for all of the entities as you need to. And that is how to set up your structure diagrams or client maps within AccountKit. Feel free to have a play and make sure you set them up right from the beginning, as it will not retroactively update any maps already created. Thank you.